Courtney, who has extensive experience working directly and involved with the NYU admissions office, who is here to give you guidance and information. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you for taking time out of your extremely busy schedules and your day and your lives, and for being here to have the benefit of this evening at Queller Test Prep. And I'm really proud of each and every one of you. You've come a long way, and I hope this is just the beginning of many good things to come. Keep in mind that because this is such a small program and we have an intimate setting here, you will have the opportunity to ask personalized Q&A after the majority of the speech is over. And I hope that you get quite a lot out of it. I'll be passing around paper, pen, note-taking, and also some information about the summer program here. So with that being said, we're really happy that you guys are here, and I hope you get a lot out of this information. Without further ado, this is Mr. Michael Courtney.
Okay. Good evening, thank you. So my name is Michael Courtney, and I used to work at the admissions office at New York University. I was there for 5 years, and I actually met Francis when I was a student at NYU many years ago, so you never know the people
College
you might stay in contact with for years to come. And now I'm director of college counseling at a private school in Riverdale called SAR High School. I've been there for 8 years and know a lot about the college admission process and happy to impart knowledge to you guys. So how many seniors are in the room? Juniors, sophomores, freshmen. All right, sophomores and juniors. So how many people are nervous about the college admission process? Makes sense, yeah, it's okay to be nervous. How many people think there's just a ton of information out there and there's just overwhelming? Yeah, so it's totally normal. So there's great things about the internet. So there's a lot of stuff to find, a lot of research. That's amazing. And negative is there's a lot of stuff to find and a lot of research. So what's great is that there's a lot of information at your disposal, but the best way to actually learn about schools is through visiting those college campuses. We'll talk about some features of the admission process, then talk about what admissions officers are looking for. So when it comes to college admissions, and comes to places that you're interested in, there are a few different things you have to think about when it comes to your own personal interests. So for example, you want to think to yourself, what type of campus do I want? Do I want to be in a city, an urban campus, maybe a suburb, so a suburban campus, and then you have something more remote would be rural. So what are examples of urban schools? What comes to mind? Columbia, right? Something in New York City. So could be Columbia, could be NYU, could be Cooper Union, could be Hunter College, Baruch College. Those are examples of urban. So Philadelphia has, right, Drexel, University of Pennsylvania, Temple, Washington, D.C., George Washington University, for example. Boston has Boston University. Those are urban schools where the city is really a big part of the lifestyle. So those are urban. So if you think of the major cities in the United States, all of them will have a college there, or multiple colleges. What city in America has the most colleges? Anyone know?
Boston.
Boston.
I knew it.
What state in America has the most colleges?
New York.
California.
Oh,
yeah.
Second.
So there are a lot of colleges out there, actually about 3,000. So whenever someone says to me, there's only one school I have to go to, that's the one place, I say, you know, give yourself more credit. There's more than one place that you can be happy and probably do very well. So there's a chance you might be denied from your first choice school, and life will go on. And I promise you 4 years later, you'll probably forget whatever happened to that admission application. So you want to think to yourself about location. You want to think about size. Do you want a school that's very large? And some schools that are very large, University of Michigan, could be University of Maryland, could be a school that has 20,000 or more undergraduates. What are some of the advantages of a very large school? Could be that there's a lot of course offerings, right? A lot of classes are being offered. So there's really nothing that's missing when it comes to the academics. Could be there's a lot of school spirit, right? A lot of football and basketball games, and it could be there's big fraternity and sorority life. So there's always a lot going on the campus. There's never a reason to be bored when there's so much going on all the time. Then there's some very small schools. The opposite end of the extreme could be a school that might only have 2,000 students. Some of you might have 2,000 in your high school, so it's the same exact size as the college. When it comes to a small liberal arts college, you're going to have a lot more of an intimate atmosphere, right? More of a relationship with the faculty there, maybe more of a close connection with the advisors. So there's a lot of that opportunity to really be a prominent face. You can't really hide and miss a class when there's only 10 kids in the class, right? People will know if you slept in. So the small liberal arts college will give you a lot of the intimate atmosphere, but it could be that they don't have as many English class offerings because the English department isn't what it's known for if it's known for the sciences. So there's some really good small liberal arts colleges out there. It could be Muhlenberg College in Allentown, Pennsylvania. It could be Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Brandeis University, which is outside of Boston in Waltham, Massachusetts. Then you have some schools that are more in the middle, schools that have a nice population. So usually small is like 5,000 and under. Middle is usually about 5 to 10,000. And large is usually at least 10,000. So a mid-sized school like Washington University in St. Louis, that's an example of a mid-sized school. You have schools that are private schools and schools that are public. So private usually means a lot more expensive sticker price, right? What do I mean by that? A public university, especially if it's in-state, is automatically going to be cheaper. But an out-of-state public, right? You guys live in New York, an out-of-state public could be Rutgers, could be University of Massachusetts. Very often an out-of-state public can be even more expensive than a private school that costs sticker price of $65,000. The reason why is a private school has more financial aid to offer. So if you apply to an out-of-state public like Rutgers, they're not going to necessarily offer the same financial aid package as a private school such as New York University. And what's the reason for that? These public universities are subsidized by the state. They have their money that they have for their in-state kids, but out-of-state kids have to pay a lot more money. But they don't have as much money to give these out-of-state students because they have to still highly subsidize their in-state. So when it comes to a college, don't let a sticker price scare you from applying. It's okay. But a sticker price shouldn't scare you from applying, but the total cost of attendance should sway whether or not you actually deposit and go there. So you'll have hopefully multiple admissions offers, financial aid packages to weigh in deciding where you want to matriculate. So I mentioned the idea of thinking about location, thinking about size. What are some other features you think are important to you when it comes to thinking about campuses?
Programs.
Right, the academic programs, right? What's the foundation of an undergraduate experience? Academics, right? You're paying tuition more so than you're paying for an apartment usually. So the actual academics are important. So for example, someone tells me when I used to work at NYU, they want to study fashion at NYU, I say go to FIT down the street, we don't have fashion. So you have to actually know if the major that you're looking for is available at that school. A small liberal arts college will generally focus on liberal arts. So that's humanities, social sciences, natural sciences, foreign languages. Schools that are larger research universities might have programs that are separate from the liberal arts. So it could have an engineering school, could have a business school, could have a school of social work, could have a school of hotel, sports, real estate, could have kinesiology, which is the study of movement. So there's many different opportunities for programs in some of those larger universities. What are other things that are important to you when it comes to thinking about colleges? We talked about programs, location, size.
Being social.
Being social, so how about maybe extracurricular activities, right? You might want to look at a school's list of clubs to see if there are places of interest within the university where you can actually find people to socialize with. So the number one cause of transitional issues for students going to college is not workload. It's finding a home, it's finding a community. So whatever it is that your background that you relate to, you'll hopefully find some commonality with the college you're going to. So if you want to go to a college that has a certain type of religious background that's similar to yours, you might want to look to see if they actually have that available at that school. So that's another thing to look for. What else do you think? Talked about social, we talked about programs, size, location. What else do you think is important to you when it comes to looking at schools? Commute, right? You actually might be a housing student, living a residential life, or you might have to be a commuter student. So if you're going to commute and the commute's hour and a half one way, hour and a half the other way, that might make it very hard for you to do. So you have to think about if it's worth it for you to go to a school where a commute seems really, really heavy. Great. These are examples of things to think about with the college admission process. Now, something that's very important with the college admission process is thinking of what are these words that are out there that describe different notifications. So, how many of you guys have heard of early decision? Okay, so who do you think can tell me, who could tell me what early decision means when it comes to the college application process?
Is it knowing your major before, like when you're deciding on your major? Is it knowing your major before so that you're not coming in undecided and just sticking to liberal arts? Or?
Okay, so similar idea. It's interesting. It's not knowing the major, it's knowing the school that you want to go to.
Oh, okay.
So early decision means there's one college that's out there that you know it's the one place you want to go to. Early decision colleges are generally private schools where you know that if offered admission, you're going to make it work financially. When it comes to geography, you'll make it work. An early decision, there's oftentimes a much, much, much smaller applicant pool. So you're not competing with, let's say, 30,000 applicants, you may be competing with 3,000. So you know that that's the one place you want to go to. You apply by November 1st, typically, of your senior year. You find out in mid-December. And if offered admission, that's where you're going. So examples of schools that have early decision: NYU has early decision, Columbia has early decision, Brandeis, Barnard, University of Pennsylvania, Cornell. These schools have early decision. Okay? So you can apply to these schools early decision, or you can apply regular decision, which is when the majority of applications come in, And regular decision is not binding. So if offered admission, you find out by April 1st, you don't have to go there. You have until May 1st to decide among your different offers. So early decision is one part of an early process. Another part of the early process is early action. Anyone ever hear of that? Have an idea what early action is? Okay, so early action, very often public universities have this system of applying. Early action means you apply by an earlier deadline, such as November 1st. You find out earlier, it could be mid-December, but you're not bound to go there. So you can still weigh other offers. Typically, state universities have early action because they actually want to see how many people they're going to have in-state versus how many people out-of-state. They have a certain quota they have to have for in-state students to satisfy their state governments. So Binghamton has an early action deadline of November 15th. The University of Maryland has November 1st. You have University of Delaware. So different schools have these earlier deadlines. And essentially the thinking is if you're interested in the school, you'll apply early action. So look at it this way. Early decision, you're getting married. Early action, you're seriously dating. Right? You don't have to commit. But when it comes to early action, you're thinking about that school. You're applying there for a reason. You're applying there earlier because if offered admission, you might consider it among your different offers. So I mentioned early decision. Anyone here heard of early decision 2?
Is it 2?
Second round of early decision. So what's an early decision 2? That means you apply by January 1st of senior year. You apply by then in conjunction with your regular decision applications. If offered admission, you find out early to mid-February. And then just like with early decision, you withdraw any other applications because that's where you're going. So why would someone apply early decision 2 to a college?
They missed the early admission 1.
Could be they missed the early decision 1, they weren't ready to apply by then, they still needed to take an SAT in December, for example. Or maybe because they wanted to get the first semester scores up, their grades up. Another reason, which is more common, someone applies early decision 2 because they didn't get in elsewhere early decision 1, but they want a second chance at that early round. That'll give them a boost over the regular decision pool, which could be 30,000 people. So early decision 2, not as many schools have it. Vanderbilt has it, Emory has it, NYU has it. So there are schools out there that have early decision 2 if you didn't get in elsewhere early decision 1 or you just weren't ready to apply by November 1st. Okay? So that's another type of deadline. Another type of deadline that's out there is called restrictive early action. So that's a little confusing. So I mentioned early action. What do you think restrictive early action means?
You have to.
So basically, restrictive early action means if you're applying to that one school early, you cannot do an early decision with it. So a regular early action school would be like a Binghamton. You can do a Binghamton early action, and you can do a Cornell early decision. And if offered admission to Cornell, you withdraw your Binghamton application. Restrictive early action are the most highly competitive schools, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford. They have restrictive early action, and they're saying if you want to apply to Stanford early, you cannot do an application to Brown early decision. So it's the school that's where you want to go most likely. Very often if you get into Stanford, you're not really turning it down. However, it's not binding. You can find out mid-December, and you still have until May 1st to decide, but you can't do that with a second early school, such as an early decision, Brown, Dartmouth, Columbia, Penn. Make sense?
So you have to. So if you're doing a restrictive action, then you're not allowed to have another application prior to it towards some other school.
Another early decision. So you cannot do Stanford with NYU early decision.
When would the restrictive action deadline be? Would it be
usually
after?
November 1st, and they'll let you know by mid-December.
Okay.
So early decision, early action, restrictive early action are generally around November 1st.
Okay, so they're all around the same time. But if you handle one, it's better. They don't want you to be a part of the other.
Right. So if you do a restrictive early action to Harvard, you cannot do also an early decision to Boston University. Okay. Who here has heard of the term rolling admission? Okay, so rolling admission, a lot of state schools have rolling admission, University of Pittsburgh, Indiana University, and the idea is that the earlier you apply in the school year, they roll out decisions as they come in, and you have a better chance of getting in earlier in the year than later in the year. So as the school year progresses, more and more seats are being filled up, their chances get harder and harder. So for students who want to apply to a rolling admission school, if they have all the scores they need, they don't need to show first semester grades because by the end of junior year, the GPA is in line with where it needs to be. You can apply by September 1st to a college and find out within 6 weeks. So not every school has all these terms, right? A rolling admission school might only be some public universities. Restrictive early action is really just Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Stanford. Early action schools generally are some of the publics, Binghamton, Albany, Maryland. And then you have early decision are a lot of the private schools, and only some of those private schools have early decision too. So, yeah.
So, when you say the September 1st, it means
Senior year. So for rolling admission, you can apply September 1st or you could do February 1st. But the truth is, the earlier you apply, the better your chances are. So it's better chances getting in September 1st than it is October 1st, than it is November 1st, because they fill up the class as the applications come in. So not as many schools have rolling admission as early action. But rolling admission, if you see a school has a rolling deadline and you have the grades and the scores to be in the conversation for that school, get out right away, start of senior year. Okay? So those are different types of deadlines that you can apply for different colleges. So we talked about...
Does it also conflict with restrictive if you don't...
No conflict.
No conflict?
Restrictive early action means you cannot do an early decision
Okay.
in conjunction with it.
Okay.
Good question. So when it comes to these different deadlines, there's many different things to think about when it comes to your fit and what you're looking for from a college. Many things to think about in terms of what are the deadlines that are out there. You also want to think about visiting campuses and why. The buzzword in admissions is demonstrated interest. Who here has heard of demonstrated interest? What do you think that means?
So if you show a college that you're interested in them, they'll more likely accept you than someone who didn't really come or visit the campus or show any interest.
Excellent. So what's a way to show demonstrated interest? You said visiting campus. What else? What's another way to show demonstrated interest? Yeah.
I know some people, when they get waitlisted or deferred from a college, they go visit the college and they go talk to some of the advisors there.
Great. So actually make another visit if you're not admitted, or write an update letter to your application stating why I still want to go to this school. That's a great way to show demonstrated interest. Yeah.
Jobs and internships?
Jobs and internships demonstrate interest? Like, what do you mean by that, though?
Like, instead of working at a camp in the summer, you could go and do an internship at a specific college. So
Okay, so a great way to show demonstrated interest is maybe doing a summer program at that college. So let's say Columbia University offers a summer program where you can take a class in the summertime. That can show demonstrated interest. Something to know, though, about taking a summer program at a college. If your scores and grades are way off from the profile of the student, doesn't matter if you took 4 summer classes. So you still have to be in the conversation. Then the demonstrated interest will kick in. Thank you for that. What's another example of demonstrating interest? So how many of you guys have a college fair in your school at some point? Okay, a bunch of colleges are going to come to your school, and they're going to have these inquiry cards that you can fill out your name, your information. When you fill it out, you're demonstrating interest. So it's annoying, your hand's going to hurt, you have to do this for many schools, but by doing that, you're being put in their database. And they're thinking, oh wow, that student came to my table when I came to their college fair, they're interested in our school. So that's one way. Another way is very often in senior year, first semester, a lot of colleges will come to your school and do smaller information sessions for, let's say, half hour.
Oh, yeah.
When you go to those, you're demonstrating interest.
Do you mention that they came by there and you were a part of it, or is it also a similar process to give you like an inquiry card? And...
So if they give you an inquiry card, you fill it out. If they don't give you an inquiry card, send an email to the admission person who came saying, thank you so much for coming, it was a pleasure to meet you. I enjoyed learning about X, Y, and Z, and then here's a question, right? What's another way of demonstrating interest? Interviewing. A lot of campuses will have optional interviews, and I tell my students where I work, optional is for some people, not for you, if the campus is nearby. So what do I mean? We live in New York City, and if Barnard has optional interviews, I tell my kids it's not optional, you have to go there, because it's not a 5-hour flight. It's not going to cost you $1,000 to get there. Take the subway, go to Barnard, interview. So interviewing is a way to demonstrate interest because they see you really are passionate about the school. Now some colleges will offer interviews on their campuses, others will have an alum or alumna do an interview with you at a Starbucks, and either way you're demonstrating interest by doing an interview. Now like I said before about summer programs, an interview is not the reason you're going to get in. Sometimes kids will say to me, I have very low scores, but I'll nail the interview. I try to say, the interview is good once you're on the cusp. Once you have what they're looking for, scores and grades are the first 2 things. So the interview is great in many ways. However, it's not going to be the reason you get in if everything else doesn't fall in line.
These are admission reviews?
Sometimes they're in the admissions office, sometimes it's scheduled with an alum.
I'm saying, but usually these optional interviews that you're talking about, are they like for admissions process?
For admissions process. However, most public universities don't offer interviews. They don't have the manpower to offer 50,000 applicants an interview. And some of the very larger private universities don't. So New York University is the largest private school in the country. They just don't have the manpower to have interviews.
Okay.
It depends on the school. You have to see if they have required interviews or optional interviews. So a school like Cornell, their interviews are fascinating. They don't have interviews that are meant to analyze you as an applicant. They have informative interviews. They have someone just giving you information about the school. So it's not going to be like an interview. They're going to learn a lot about you. However, it does demonstrate interest to do that interview. Make sense? Another way to demonstrate interest is if you go on their website. Some colleges actually track web activity. They can track if they emailed you and you even opened the email. They can track if they emailed you, if you opened the email, how long you stayed on that website. Now, it sounds like Big Brother is watching, and yes, in some of these colleges, Big Brother is watching.
applications, should you respond to those? Is that a demonstrated interest?
Definitely. So what happens is these colleges will purchase your scores, and if they purchase very high scores, they're going to send you a ton of material. Now it could be misleading. So for example, I have a student who had very high PSAT scores. He's getting information from Duke and WashU and Chicago, and he thinks these schools want him. I said, they have no idea your transcript is straight B's. So all they know is that you had high scores. So what is it they want? They want for you to apply because then you can actually apply and potentially be admitted, or you can apply and be denied, and that looks better for U.S. News and World Report because they have a more selective admission process. So college admission people, they actually invite you to apply, but tons and tons of material doesn't mean they want you. It just means they want you to apply because they'll be happy to have you if they admit you based on the PSAT. But they're also happy to deny you because then it looks like they're more selective, the more people that are applying.
Mm-hmm.
So University of Chicago is a great example. It's a top 5 university when it comes to academics and education. They joined the Common App a few years ago. I'll explain what the Common App is shortly. And their applications proliferated big time to the point where they went from being a 46% admit rate to a 4% admit rate within 5 years. So it used to be almost 1 out of 2 people got in, now it's more like 1 out of 20. That's a huge difference, right? And why? They recruited like crazy. They joined the Common Application. So what's the Common App? It's a mechanism that allows you to apply to many schools at once using one application.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these schools in the Common App will have supplementary essays, but there's only one essay that binds together all these colleges, the main college essay. There's only one extracurricular resume chart you have to do. There's only one page you have to do filling out your parents' information, their sibling information. You don't have to do it many times for each school, you just do it once. So the vast majority of private schools are on the Common App. A lot of public schools are on the Common App as well. There are exceptions, obviously. So University of California schools, you have to do the UC application. You don't do it on the Common App. Rutgers has their own. Maryland has their own. You have Georgetown has their own application. You can't apply to Common App. But a lot of schools will let you apply to many colleges at once using the Common Application.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Other factors. Now let's talk about admissions officers. What are they looking for from you? There's many different things they're looking for. They look at the high school transcript. So what is the high school transcript? It's a collection of your courses and your grades that demonstrate from 9 through 12 what you'll look like going into college. So if you're applying as a senior, they're going to see 3 full years of data. And if you're applying to a school with an earlier deadline, they'll ask for first quarter grades. And for regular decision, they'll ask for first semester grades. And then wherever you deposit, they'll ask for your final transcript.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever someone says senior year doesn't matter, says who? Senior year matters because they'll ask for first quarter grades, regular decision first semester, and wherever you deposit, they want to see that final transcript so that they see that the grades that you got the first 3 years stayed the same senior year. Okay? So yes, junior year, there's a little bit more stress because the admission process is ahead. Whereas senior year, you might be done with the admission process by December. They still have to have very good grades senior year. Colleges are looking at the curricular rigor. So some students will say to me, is it more important to take a regular class and get an A or an honors class and get a B? And what's the answer? You take the honors class and get the A. Meaning you're supposed to be in the highest tracking that is compatible with your strengths. And once you're at that tracking, do everything you can to get that top grade. So if you are someone who is outstanding in the sciences, you should be taking an AP in the sciences. It could be biology, chemistry, physics. If you're someone who's very weak in the sciences, an AP in the science will just destroy your GPA. You're not going to do well in it.
So wait, can you repeat that? If they asked you to get either in a regular class and get an A or an AP class and get a B, or did you?
Then you take the AP class and get the A.
It's a general.
Oh, okay.
Meaning you should take the highest curriculum that you're potentially able to succeed in, and once you're in that class, do the best you can to get the highest grade.
All kidding aside, if you take pre-calc and get a B minus, what's going on? Should you have taken like basic algebra instead?
It's a good question. It's kind of important to graduate from high school having pre-calc by the end of senior year.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not ready for pre-calc
And that's
junior
a high
year,
level math, okay? So we're on the same page.
Right. if you're not ready for pre-calc junior year, don't do it junior year. But there's also exceptions. If you're applying for artistic programs, they're not going to care for the math as much as a general liberal arts or as an engineering or as business. So it depends on your strengths. So someone shouldn't push themselves to pre-calc if they got a C minus in Algebra 2. Right? You have to know what your strengths are. But when it comes to curricular rigor, the colleges look at you within the context of your high school. So if the high school that you go to offers honors and offers advanced placements, then the more selective colleges will expect you to take a more competitive curriculum. Make sense? So the school where I work, we limit kids to 4 APs. Nobody can take more than 4. So I tell my kids who are looking into the Ivy League schools, you have to take 4. There's no questions asked. Because we have enough applicants that will do that, and that puts them at the most competitive curriculum.
All the hard classes available at your school.
If they're applying to those top schools. If they're applying to an art school that's only looking at their audition or their portfolio, then the curricular rigor isn't as important. If you're applying to an engineering school, curricular rigor is very important in math and science. So for a lot of engineers, let's say you're applying to the more competitive engineering schools, Carnegie Mellon, Cornell, MIT, Caltech, you better have AP Calc, very often BC, it's better than EB, and either AP Physics or AP Chemistry. So you have to know the strengths of what you're looking for. If you're looking for general liberal arts, you don't have to have that, but engineering, you would.
Competitive program, they want to see the higher level courses.
The more competitive the program is, the more they think you're ready to do the work in their
So
college.
what about an A plus in astronomy versus a B minus in AP Chem?
So it depends on the schools you're applying to. Some colleges never want to see a B minus, and the A plus in astronomy will look better. However, Harvard's going to see, wait a minute, you took astronomy when you could have taken AP Chem. You should have taken AP Chem and got an A. So it depends on the schools that you're applying to. So the idea is
What about a
that,
school like NYU, like a dental program or some kind of program like that?
so there's a difference. Like if you're applying to NYU for the Stern School of Business versus if you're applying to a school like, there's different schools within NYU that aren't as selective, like real estate program. So if you're applying to a school within NYU or a school within Cornell that has many undergraduate colleges, or Penn, for example, there's Wharton School of Business, and there's nursing, or engineering, arts and sciences, you have to know the parameters of the different schools. So the more competitive programs in the university will expect to see that highly demanding curriculum with great grades.
So if let's say I had a choice to take AP Calc in 11th grade and 12th grade, like would be considered a lot more impressive if I took it junior year.
If you got a 4 or a 5, got an A for the course, definitely.
But like if I chose to take it in senior year and I got a 4 or a 5, is that like
Colleges won't know about the 4 or
They
5
will
because
not
that's going to be
know.
released in July after you
Senior year
graduate.
Classes will not come in.
What if because I know some schools don't even. I mean, some schools are looking to see the score you would get on these APs, but some don't even credit you. Like I know Dartmouth doesn't even want to take any more scores.
But where's it misleading? Dartmouth still expects you to take the AP classes.
They still expect
They
you
just
to
don't
take
care
it.
about the scores.
Yeah, you don't care about the scores because they don't want to give you credit. But I wanted to ask, what if you instead of showing, like, what if you don't show your scores, but you give like on the transcript they see all the APs that you took and they're high grades there, but you don't want to give them the scores because.
Good question. So the question, and also we get the question sometimes, can I take the AP course and not take the AP exam?
Mhm.
So here's the thing. On the Common Application, you self-report different scores, including AP. If they see your junior year you took AP Biology and AP US History, but you didn't write down in the Common App you got a 4 or 5, 4 or 5, they'll think you either never took it, which isn't impressive, or you took it and got a 1, 2, or 3.
Hmm.
So the truth is, whatever AP course you're taking, you should be taking the AP exam, studying really hard for that AP exam, because if you got a 4 or 5, you might get college credit for most colleges. It also looks good for the application that you're very capable of succeeding in higher level college type of curriculum. Okay? Yeah.
So, I go to Bard High School early college, and we don't offer APs. Like, everything we take from our junior year and senior year are college
Correct.
classes.
Yep.
So how does that...
Great question. So not every high school offers AP. Some offer IB, which is International Baccalaureate. Some offer college courses through a campus. So whichever rigorous curriculum you're taking to really take advantage of what your school has to offer, colleges will be impressed. Right? So it's important to take the strength of the curriculum that pertains to your strengths and that you're doing as well as you can in these courses. So whether it's AP or IB or college courses, whether it's honors, whether it's accelerated, you should try to be taking the more enriched curriculum if you'll do well in those classes. So transcript is very important to the college admissions folks. What else is very important next is standardized testing. So when it comes to standardized testing, you have students taking SATs, ACTs, SAT subject tests, AP exams. These are different forms of standardized testing.
Do you mind if I ask you a quick question before we go into that? When it comes to some, the AP classes and honors classes, they're all weighted. And when it comes to seeing your transcript, it gives you, I believe, when you get your report card, it says weighted, and on the transcript it says, unweighted, but it may be weighted or something else. Is there a way that maybe colleges get like a different form where it might be unweighted without everything in there, and they kind of see how you are? Because you may have a 94 GPA, but that's because when you took your courses, the courses themselves weighed up.
Right.
So
That's a great question. So most colleges, most high schools actually report unweighted GPA. Colleges recalculate grade point averages on their own scales of what they're looking for. So they're going to look for your grades and then separately the curricular rigor. So when they have grades, they might say this person on a 4.0 scale is a 3.7, but a 3.7 in the most demanding curriculum is a lot more impressive than a 3.7 in just general curriculum. So they're not going to look at the weighted GPA that the schools are reporting, they'll look at it more on their scales that they're actually measuring.
So they have their own version of looking at your GPA when it comes to.
So our GPA calculations, if you took a journalism class, that's great. I'm happy to do that for your school. It doesn't go into our GPA at NYU when we recalculate.
Also, they have their own selection. Like
Exactly.
they determine your GPA separately, removing all the courses that are probably
Right.
not necessary.
But they still see the transcript. So when I saw someone get a 55 in driver's ed, I'm thinking, oh my god, why is that person such a bad driver? Like, there's still a story in there, even though it
Okay.
doesn't go into our GPA
But all
scale.
these extra classes, like if you have, because with your GPA, you're being averaged in with, let's say, if you're taking orchestra or drama or anything else on an additional side, so they'll be removing it and rescoring it with their own version of the weight. Like they'll look at it the way that it should be given, or
They'll
the way they determine it should be weighted.
So NYU is an example of a school that would look at just English, history, math, science, foreign language on their scale of GPAs because it's a standard thing that every high school can have.
Mm.
If you do orchestra, if you do yearbook, if you do soccer, it's great that you get a great grade and it looks nice, but
Mhm.
doesn't actually go into their GPA calculations.
Okay.
So the key is whatever class you're taking, don't consider it a throwaway class. If it's on the transcript, it'll still be viewable, and that's something they could critique. So
Okay.
just do the best you can in every class is important. So when it comes to standardized testing, it's important to know that junior year, you're going to be prepping for standardized testing. So it's almost like the rite of passage in college admission. That junior year, you're working hard on test prep. So when it comes to test prep, it is okay to test multiple times, and colleges will take the highest score. So for example, SAT, if you get the highest critical reading in January, highest March math, and highest May is writing, you can send all three. Make sense? So colleges want high scores. Why? Because they want to report to U.S. News and World Report, our average applicant has this score, our average admit has this, and our average yield, which means the admit that actually comes to us, has that. So they are looking to take your highest scores.
Mhm.
However, if you got an 800 in critical reading in January, now you're trying to improve the math in March, then all of a sudden get a 400 in critical reading because they will know which one's the mistake. So if you're going to go down, it's okay to go down from an 800 to a 750. Don't go down from an 800 to a 400 where you just put your head down the whole time during critical reading. Make sense? So looking at high scores, right? SAT subject tests, formerly called SAT-2s, are also important to the college admission process if you have strength in these subjects. So let's say you took AP Biology junior year.
Mhm.
By virtue of preparing for the AP curriculum, you're going to be prepared for the SAT subject test in biology. So you want to take that test. Same with U.S. history. So SAT subject tests are offered in English literature, they're offered in history and U.S. history and world history, they're offered in Math 1 and Math 2. And Math 2 is more advanced, but something you should know is Math 1 isn't as advanced, but the curve is tougher. There's little nuggets of information out there. They're offered in science, biology, chemistry, and physics, and they're offered in foreign language. So there's the language test, there's also the listening test.
Mhm.
So Spanish, Chinese, Hebrew, French, Latin, these are different SAT subject tests that are offered. So a lot of colleges will require standardized tests like SAT or ACT with 2 subject tests. A lot of them will heavily recommend, which means you should be taking them and doing well. Yes.
What would you recommend for student who runs hygiene program at NYU? What exams would you recommend for subject testing?
So for NYU, for pre-health, anything that's pre-health could be
College
dental,
Arts and
could be, right, College of Arts and Sciences. NYU doesn't require subject tests. However, very high subject tests can only help out your application. It looks impressive to get 700s. So you shouldn't do 2 in the same subject. It shouldn't be that you have 2 and they are Math 1 and Math 2. Right? If you're going to have Math 1, Math 2, make sure you have something else outside of math, like literature, like U.S. history. If you're thinking of medicine, it's a good idea to have biology, chemistry, or physics, and something else.
What if you have more than, let's say you take, because I had the option of taking more SAT-2s earlier on, but I was thinking of maybe just limiting myself down to 3. Would any more, like, would you have to report them as additionally, or is it all counted?
You have score choice, so you get to choose what you want to send to different schools.
Is there a limit?
Some colleges will say we want to see everything, and you still don't have to send them. So you can actually override that. So I would say that if you have 5 very high subject tests that are in the 700s, send them. It looks really good. Now for some colleges, high 600s will look good, but for most colleges, 700s really is a threshold of demonstrating mastery of a subject.
Mhm.
So SAT subject tests are great to help buttress your application. Do they replace the SAT? No. But it's something to supplement the SAT score.
So for the foreign language SAT2, do they only have the listening?
No, some have it actual as a literature. Yeah. The important thing to know about subject tests in foreign language is you should be at the AP level if you're not a native speaker, because the curve is very rough, and native speakers tend to dominate those.
Yeah.
So if you're not a native speaker, make sure you're near the AP level. It's not just something you picked up 2 years ago and you just started the class. Something that you're really, really skilled in.
Would it be interesting if you're not like a non-native speaker and you're taking like an AP language, SAT2 and language and you're not usually
Yeah.
like non-native, like everything.
Absolutely. If your first language is Russian, but you're taking AP Spanish, that's very impressive. Definitely. Okay? So standardized testing is important. It's important to prep for an exam, just like how many athletes we have here, how many musicians we have, how many theater people do we have. Just like you prep for a game by having practice, just like you prep for a show, theater, by actually having rehearsals, just like you prep for a recital by practicing, your standardized tests you have to practice for. So it's important that you put in the effort and the time to do test prep. So I'm guessing Queller prep, maybe Francis knows something about test prep here. Test prep is something to think about, keep in mind, whether it's for SAT, SAT subject test, because these are obviously important parts of the college admission process. What else is important? You have the idea of the college essay. College essay is huge, right? You have the college essay, which will be going to many different schools. Then you have supplementary essays. So a college essay, there's 5 different topics. You choose any topic and you write about it. Now, here's a little trick. People sometimes get hung up on the questions in the Common App. They have no idea what to write. Just write about yourself, and once you finish writing about yourself, it'll fall into one of the categories. So if you're going to write about your grandmother as an influential figure, and all you do is write about your grandmother, it has nothing to do with you and the connection you have with her, that's not a great college essay, even if it's beautifully written. So it's important that whatever you're writing about, you're able to connect. Now, it's important to think also, if you're applying to some of the more highly selective schools, you have to think about the separation factor. How do I make my essay really unique? So that this way, when they've read 50 applications in a day, and it's now 8 p.m., and they're tired, that I got their attention in that first sentence. And after getting their attention in that first sentence, they're reading the whole first paragraph really closely. After they love that first paragraph, they're going to stick to this essay, not just quickly skim it. That's important to think. There's a human reading that application, and you really want to get their attention. Doesn't mean you have to be funny. Doesn't have to mean that you make them cry. Doesn't have to mean that you are surprising them and scaring them. It's just that there's a story there. So I tell my kids, this is your chance to be a storyteller. When you're writing a college essay, it's not just at 9 a.m. I do this, and at 9:30 I do that, and at 10 o'clock I do that. Really hone in on the 9 a.m. what happened. If there's something that day that really influenced you. That's what you have to think about with the college essay. Now the college essay, some kids will say, I'm a very low tester, but I'm going to write the best college essay. You have to think to yourself, there's a threshold of what they're looking for. So if NYU doesn't want to see test scores below a certain number, and you're 400 points below their average, it doesn't matter how great the essay is, they're not going to read it. They're not going to really read it that closely because you're so far off profile. So it's important to know that the supplementary essays, really go hand in hand once you have the application pieces, which is transcript and test scores, to be in the conversation. Make sense? So a lot of colleges will have supplementary essays, which also demonstrate interest. Questions are, why do you want to go to X university? Or why do you want to study blank at this university? What led you to apply here? These are ways you can actually write about what you know about that school and why you think you're a good match for that school. So, for example, University of Pennsylvania has a question with whichever school you're applying to append, let's say arts and sciences, what is it that is interesting you academically about this school? You can't just say, I want to be pre-med because I want to be a doctor. You have to really delve in and say, this biology professor has done that research and I want to work with that person during my free time. And this chemistry professor teaches this groundbreaking theories that only Penn undergraduates have. So the idea that you're really learning more about the school by doing research online, by staying at that school maybe overnight and visiting classes and staying with alumni from your high school and getting to know what that school is like. You really have to know about the school more so than just the superficial, what the admissions page says. Okay? Another example of essays, that supplementary essays, why they matter. Johns Hopkins University, one of the top undergraduate research schools in the world, there's a difference in selectivity between applying as a humanities major. It's a little bit more selective if you want to be a social science major, and it's really selective if you want to be a science major. So if you're going to write about why you want to be a science major, you have to have done really groundbreaking research and written about that research. Or you have to have really done something very special with your AP biology class. The professor in the recommendation letter really talks about you being one of the top students he or she has ever taught. So you have to think about the school you're applying to and the programs that you're looking for and how you're a match for that school. So essay is very important. I mentioned recommendation letter. So what's a recommendation letter? Every student's going to ask 2 teachers to write a recommendation letter. And you also have a school official. Could be a guidance counselor, the college counselor, an assistant principal. So every single student who applies to school is going to have 3 different rec letters to think about. There are some colleges that don't require any. City University of New York doesn't require any. We tell our students have these in case you end up applying somewhere else. So you want to think about 2 teachers. So within the classroom setting, you've really established yourself as someone who's a participant in the class. You've excelled in certain units. You've raised your hands. You've stayed after class to ask questions. The teacher knows who you are. So generally junior year or 1 from sophomore year is okay. It shouldn't be a freshman teacher. Some schools only want junior year. Yale and Barnard do not want to see sophomore year teachers, for example. So you have to look at the admission requirements of the different schools to make sure you fall in line with what they're looking for. So if you have 2 teacher recommendation letters, should they be from driver's ed and phys ed? No, right? It should be English, history, math, science, foreign language. Unless you're applying to a music conservatory, then a music teacher. You're applying to an art school, then an art teacher. But for general liberal arts, English, history, math, science, foreign language, and engineering, definitely math or science.
So you would say across the ball 6th to 11th grade.
Or, I mean, most schools will be okay with 10th grade. So I'm just saying Yale and Barnard are examples specifically that say we want 11th grade. So if you have an amazing 10th grade teacher, very often sometimes that 10th grade teacher might be teaching you again senior year.
Well,
Those could be
I'm
good
asking
teachers.
because of the rigor of classes you take in 11th grade then is now even more important because your 11th grade chemistry teacher or your 11th grade, depending on what your long-term goals are,
Right.
the 11th grade teacher is now really important. The
So-
subject is important.
Right, the curricular level, if you have a 10th grade honors, fine, but if 10th grade is all grade level and also 11th grade are taking honors and APs, then it'll look more impressive to have those honors and APs from 11th grade.
What if you had an AP course in the 10th grade, like AP chemistry in the 10th grade, but would that be...
Excellent letter. But you have to know your teacher also, so maybe ask the school official, does this teacher write well? It could be English isn't their native language and they don't write as well in English. So sometimes students will say, I want to ask this teacher to write a letter. I'll say, ask someone else. So you have to be very careful to make sure that the person is writing a really unique letter, not just some standard letter where it inserts your name with insert this GPA, insert this subject. There's an actual story they're able to tell. So you have 2 letters from teachers, you have 1 letter from your school counselor. Sometimes students ask if they can have a supplementary letter, so if you have an employer who can really write about your characteristics, that's great, but you shouldn't be having 10 recommendation letters. Colleges don't have time to read them, they just don't care. So 2 teachers, 1 counselor, and if you feel like you want to have 1 supplementary letter, great. Don't feel like you have to have that. So that's the next
I have a
level.
question.
Yeah.
We have 2 recommendation letters from 1 sophomore year teacher for math and then a junior year math.
It'd be better to have 2 different subjects. It's a great question. So just like 2 SAT subject tests should be in different subjects, recommendation letters shouldn't be both from math or both from English or both from history. Great question. So the next thing we can talk about is extracurricular activities. So how many people here are involved in clubs on campus? So what are some examples of things you do? Let's throw them out. Debate, great.
SAT.
What's that?
It's for reviewing foundation.
Excellent.
Red Cross Club.
What else?
My bio.
I do stuff like peer tutoring and peer mentoring and
Right. Don't talk about in school and out of school. Sorry.
National Honor Society,
National Honor
MedBio, which is a college they made for medical and biology. You have the health for future doctors, and etc.
Right, so it's important to be involved and engaged in
On
extracurriculars. Colleges are looking not necessarily that you're involved in 20 things, but you have multi-year commitments to some of them. So it could be that you're involved in 3 or 4 things, you've been doing them for 3 or 4 years, as opposed to just senior year adding on everything. Yes, you have a question.
Is it more important if you are a part of a group outside of school or inside of school?
So it's a good question. Either or is fine, but it shouldn't be that the only activities that you have are in the summer. They want to see you're doing things in the school year that you can balance with your academics. And the reason why is because they want you in college to be able to do things with the school year, with your academics, while you're doing extracurriculars in the school. So if your only involvements are outside of school, you're involved in different charities, you're involved in employment, that looks great. But they want to see more during the school year. So it shouldn't just be the only things you do are in the summer. So whether you're involved in debate, you're involved in mock trial, you're involved in newspaper, you're involved in yearbook, you're involved in athletic team, theater, pre-med society, when you're involved in these different things, colleges like to see multi-year commitments. They actually ask hours per week and weeks per year. So if you're writing that you do something for half an hour a week, for 5 weeks a year, and you only did it in 9th grade, that's not so impressive, right? They look to see you've done things multiple years, or things that could be multiple hours a week and multiple weeks a year. That's something that really looks good. There's also an honors section on the application, so if you did debate and you won first place in some competition, that looks great.
What
Okay?
if you, I guess not exactly community service, but what if you have service credit from your school? Like, let's say you monitor for dean's office, or if you're like in the library.
That's awesome. You can definitely list that in the application.
Do you have someone that's like maybe that person in charge, right? Like, would it be like a good
So
supplement?
it's a question. In the extracurricular chart, you don't have to verify everything with a recommendation letter. The school official who writes your letter will write about what those things are that you do, because you're going to give a form to that person with what you do, and they'll know to write about that. Okay? So when it comes to extracurriculars, they're looking to see leaders. Are you a captain of a team, a founder of a club, a president of an organization? Are you someone who's taken on initiative and really been assertive with that club and made it more popular, larger, These are things they're looking for when it comes to extracurriculars, multi-year commitments. They also look for passion. They look for leadership. When it comes to summers, sometimes people think, I'm too busy during the school year, I'll just do something great in the summer. That's not going to work for most colleges. They want to see things that you're doing during the school year, that you're an active citizen in your school, or you're actively engaged outside of your school. So maybe through your local religious organization you're involved, maybe you do a big brother, big sister in your local community center, maybe you do recreational swim because your school doesn't have a swim team. So these are things they'll notice when it comes to the extracurricular resume. So colleges are also looking at the college interview if they offer it, right? So we talked about transcripts, standardized test scores, essays, recommendation letters, extracurricular activities. They'll also look at the interview if offered. Demonstrating interest is important. So University of Chicago said to me, I emailed that student twice. That student never responded to my interview request. I don't think that student's that interested. Right? There's a good chance the student was interested, but you're so overwhelmed with emails that you just probably glossed over it. It's very important to know you might want to have just one email address for colleges, and that email address should be very, very refined. It should be firstname.lastname@gmail, or something like firstname.middleinitial.lastname. It should not be crazysexycool at, I've seen that before, crazysexycool@yahoo.com. Like, that's not so professional sounding. So you want to think about whatever email address you're going to use for your application. It could be email address for an employer one day. It should be something that makes you seem like a legitimate person and not someone who's some prankster. We actually, when I used to work at NYU, we used to make a whole list of favorite email addresses of the year. And I can't begin to tell you what's up there. So don't be that person who makes that list. So on that vein, actually, you probably want to clean up your online profiles. So if you are on Facebook, you are on Twitter, you are on Instagram, there should be no pictures online that colleges can potentially see. Now, anything you post online is online forever in some capacity. So when I tell my kids who are wondering if this picture is good, if that picture is good, I say any picture that you'd be embarrassed to show your grandmother, you should be embarrassed to show your college admissions people. Make sense? So if it's you doing a keg stand, that's not something you'd want your grandmother to see. College admission people shouldn't see it. When it comes to Facebook, some people say, oh, I could just change my name on Facebook and make it something really cutesy. Colleges can still pick up on it. Now, people ask me, do college admissions people start researching you for Facebook? The answer is they're not going to research every single applicant. They don't have time. However, let's say after reading 10 applications, they just need a 10-minute break, and they just admitted 3 kids. They might be curious. Oh, I wonder what their Facebook page is like. So there is a chance they could check out your Facebook page, your Instagram, your Twitter, anything you blog. One time when I was working at NYU, this is in the spring of 2005, we had a scholars program for the College of Arts and Science. We flew in different people. We found out the day before the flying that this one person was writing very, very bigoted blogs. Okay, and this is a flying program. It's supposed to be the top scholar. So luckily someone researched it. Bigoted, very prejudiced, very racist, very anti-certain types of ethnicities.
And this was his website.
His blog.
His free opinion. It's a free country.
Yeah, it's a free country. Write whatever you want. Okay, we can still get in trouble. Right?
He was admitted.
No, we revoked it. We
He
revoked
was
it.
admitted
He was admitted, invited to fly in. And the day before the flying,
on
we
a
said,
scholarship.
yep.
You were going to pay for the flight.
The day before the flying, we said, stay home. We don't want you here.
Wow.
So that happens. So make sure your online identities are clean. Hopefully you guys are not prejudiced, bigoted people. But if you are, don't put it online. Okay, so when it comes to, I said interviews is another factor. Another factor could be if you have some type of special thing you can bring to the school. Maybe you're a recruited athlete. Maybe you're a recruited musician. Maybe you're someone who has some type of diversity for the school. So, for example, if you're applying to a college in, I don't know, Montana, coming from New York makes you geographically diverse. Could be ethnically diverse. Could be religiously diverse. Could be socioeconomically diverse. These are things they're looking at. They look at legacy. So maybe if a parent went to a school, or some schools look at a grandparent. That could be something they look into. But none of these factors will make up for everything else. Like transcript and rec letter and standardized testing are still the most important. Unless you could buy a building. If you buy a building and get into whatever school you want, depends on the cost of that school. That's a whole other issue. So when it comes to the college admission process, it's important to know there's many different factors. The speech I just gave you might hear at many different colleges. However, many different colleges have different statistics of what it is they're looking for. So some schools will say the middle 50% of applicants have this SAT score. So let's say the middle 50% of applicants on the math and critical reading of the SAT have a 1300 to a 1450. If you're at an 800, right, it's going to be very hard to get into that school. But if you're at a 1450, it means you're in the higher end of the school. You have a nice chance of getting in. Make sense? You have to look at that. Kids like to ask, what about the writing section of the SAT? Does it matter at all? Here's the answer. There's a reason why there's a writing section, right? It's not there because it's just for fun to make you take an essay. So, a lot of colleges will prioritize the writing like they would critical reading, like they would math. A number of colleges will notice the writing section, and a very high score, like in the 700s, can impress them. A very low score, let's say sub 400, might really be a deterrent. And some schools will say they don't really look at it at all. However, my thinking is, when you're taking a test, you always want to take the writing section and take it very seriously because you never know what options it could open up for you. It's important to take the writing seriously.
What about the new SAT format that they're planning on implementing next year, where they're going to make it basically easier, less vocab complexity, and no point deductions, and the optional writing? I mean, I guess maybe colleges will want to see the optional writing done like the ACT, where they would rather see it, but I mean, where it's much easier next year than would be this year. How would you?
Good question. The new SAT is not going to be easier. It's just going to be different. So what happened? What's the story behind it? The ACT took over market share from the SAT for the first time ever, meaning more people took the ACT than the SAT. SAT panicked because historically they were the tests that everyone took. They decided to make their tests more in line with what the ACT looks like. Doesn't mean it's easier though. It's just a different type of testing. So for example, there's going to be a section where you have to read stuff from founding documents. That might be very hard for some kids. Might be easier for others. So it's going to be very different. There's not going to be the esoteric vocabulary words that you never have to use the rest of your lives. That part they're trying to get rid of. However, there are going to be sections that you've never encountered before, and you still have to prep for those sections. So when it comes to the new SAT, how many sophomores are in the room? You guys are the guinea pigs for the new SAT. So what I would tell you is you might want to think about taking the old SAT in the fall of junior year, right? And if you do very well on that, you might take it again in the fall because you don't have to take a new one until March of junior year. But if you got the scores you wanted from November or December or January of junior year, you are done. Okay? Colleges are not going to prioritize whether they get the old SAT or new. They just want high scores. So juniors, you're done. You don't have to worry about new SAT. Sophomores, you could potentially not have to worry about new SAT if you score where you need to score early on. Other questions?
I wanted to ask before we stray away from extracurricular. What if you, not exactly, if you put in part-time at something because you had to kind of function in your hours, or basically you would somehow call and schedule that you can come and volunteer during a certain time here, like basically part-time hours. So instead of, like weekly for this many number of hours, just a total number of hours you've probably spent, and it could be documented. Would that be something that they will be accepted, or something that would be seen?
So what happens is you have to average the hours out. So some students will say to me, I'm on debate. Some weeks we do 5 hours worth. Some other weeks we don't do anything. Some weeks we do 3. Basically, you average it out. That's all it is.
Okay.
So it shouldn't be that you're doing some club and it's half an hour a week for only 4 weeks in the year. And that's your number one activity because you rank it in order of importance. So the ones that have multi-year commitments with multiple hours a week and weeks per year, those are the ones that should be right to the top. And you'll know what those are. You know yourself. You know what your hectic schedule is like. You can put those first. Yes?
For early action and early decision, you said the deadline is usually like November 1st. So I can, my son can only apply to, say for example, early decision Columbia. Then he cannot do early action at the same time?
He can do early action, but he cannot do 2 early decisions, and he cannot do restrictive early action. So he cannot do Columbia early decision with Harvard restrictive early action. He can do Columbia early decision with Binghamton early action.
Oh, he can still do early action.
But not restrictive early action and no second early decision.
So once you apply for the first one, it's still not better to go with the second one. Like since it's too early decision.
Right. So you go for the second early decision if a school offers it that you're interested in. So not every school has early decision too.
Okay, but I'm saying if you go for the first early action, and then is it early action or early decision?
Early decision is the one that has early decision 1 and early decision 2.
So if you take early decision 1, let's say you get the referred or waitlist, and then you can't reapply for early decision 2.
Then you can do a different school, early decision 2.
Different school?
This is a very good question actually. Let's say you apply to Columbia early decision 1, they defer you into the regular decision pool. Now you might think to yourself, should I apply to NYU early decision 2, or should I hold out hope for Columbia that'll work out in regular decision? You understand my question here? My advice is if you're deferred from an Ivy, emotionally move on. If they're not going to take you in early with only a few thousand, I don't know how they're going to take you in regular with 30,000. Now there have been exceptions. However, don't give up that early decision 2 if you're more than okay going to that second choice school.
Would you be able to do an early decision? Let's say would it be better? No, I'm saying, is it going to be barred as soon as you take the early decision for one school and you didn't do a regular admission? Or?
Well, regular decision deadlines are after early decision notification comes out.
But can you do it can you do both of them at the same?
So I tell my students definitely, if you apply to a school early decision, the regular decision deadline is January 1st, and you find out you don't get in December 15th, then you have 2 weeks to work on applications when you're emotionally distraught. So start working on your applications after you're done with early decision. Just don't click submit yet. Why pay the application fee if you end up getting into the early decision school?
Oh, okay.
But early action still we can do with
Early
decision.
action, you can do 3 early action schools with early decision, but if offered admission to early decision, you withdraw those early action applications.
How does the college process work in terms of applying for financial aid?
Great question. That's the next topic. So, with applying for financial aid, how it works is this. If you're applying to any college, you go to their financial aid website. They have something called a net price calculator. The net price calculator allows you to see what your financial numbers will look like from a school based on the previous year's tax incomes. So, let's say right now you look at the New York University website and you want to see what the net price calculator is. You'll look at your 2014 tax numbers, plug it into their calculation, and they'll say to you what a potential financial aid package could look like. So if parents make combined $5 million a year, it's going to say you're not getting any aid. So it depends on what the salary scale is for the parents, the dual income, of what kind of financial aid package they can give you. So if you're applying to a school that has an early decision, you have to look at that net price calculator first and see if the estimate they're going to offer you can work for you and your family. So how it works is they might say to you, you know what, we don't think you're eligible for financial aid, but your parents might think we really do need financial aid. We have 4 kids, 3 of them are going to be in college, we have this house, we don't want to lose the house. So it could be based on income, you can afford it, but the reality is maybe you can't afford it. So you shouldn't be applying to a school early decision if you can't make it work financially. You need to compare a financial aid package. Wherever you end up applying, between January 1st and some schools is February 15th or March 1st or February 1st, you have something called the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. Something very important to know, FAFSA.com is a scam and it costs money. FAFSA's real website is fafsa.ed.gov. It's a government website that's free. It's the free application for federal student aid. So when you apply for the FAFSA, you list the colleges that you want to apply to, you list incomes, so you have the previous year's tax returns, and the college can give you a financial aid package. So, I said January 1st, right? If you're going to give the FAFSA form March 25th, you might be behind the 8 ball, and there might not be any money left for you if admitted. So it's important to get those forms in on time. Well, it's January 1st is the earliest for the previous year's tax numbers. So it could take a few weeks to get those tax numbers, but as long as you get it in before a deadline, which could be February 1st, February 15th, depends on the college, then you're okay. Some schools have something called the CSS profile, which is an additional financial aid form in addition to the FAFSA and takes into account other factors beyond just income. So if colleges require that, you do have to submit that. That actually costs $25. But the FAFSA is free.
When we had the Yale, we had a speaker from Yale University come, and I believe he quickly just said something before he left regarding where if you're under a low-income family, something could be worked out financially could be placed out more than what would be it's much larger that could be coming out if you're like one of those low income that makes maybe under 50,000 or something.
So some
but
schools
fit their requirements.
Right. So some schools have more money. They have more endowment to allow you to go loan free and not have to pay any loans whatsoever. Depends on the school. So Princeton also has a loan-free program. So what that means is that they have such high endowment, they have so much donations to their overall bank of money that they have a lot allotted for financial aid. So colleges can offer you scholarships, could be need-based or merit-based, they can offer you scholarships, or grants, which is money given from the state to support your education, or they can give you low-interest loans. The federal government recommends you only take out a certain amount per year. So if you know you want to go into teaching, you should not be taking out $100,000 just so you can go to a brand-name college, right? You have to know what field you want to go into. So it shouldn't be that you're in significant debt for anything. If you're going to go into debt, it should be a little bit more for positions where you actually could make back that money. So the federal government recommends you don't take out more than $18,000 for 4 years of undergrad. So if you're going to take out $18,000 to go into a hedge fund one day, finance, investment banking, that's okay. But you shouldn't be taking out $50,000 because you want to be a writer, meaning it's going to be very hard to pay that back. So there's low-interest loans, and there's also federal work-study, which is the opportunity to work an on-campus job while you're in college to help support your tuition. So that could be working in the admissions office, working in the library, working in a computer lab, working in the athletic center, and these are on-campus jobs. So actually the kids generally that have the highest GPAs on campus are those with on-campus jobs. They're able to balance their time well. Their supervisors work for the university, so they actually care about you. There's a nice dynamic going on with working on campus.
I was under the impression that Ivies don't usually give they're not known for their scholarships, or maybe there's like,
They're known for need-based scholarships. Ivy Leagues don't need to give merit-based scholarships because anyone who's admitted to an Ivy is worthy of a merit-based scholarship.
okay.
So they give need-based financial assistance.
So are merit-based scholarships also given based on like what you did in the summer or like APs that you took, or
Good question.
or is it just like totally outside of school?
So merit-based scholarships are holistic, based on everything, but the scores and the grades is what gives you that initial profile. So they're not going to give you a merit-based scholarship just because you have a great extracurricular resume if your scores are pretty low. So they may have admitted you because they loved your resume. They probably won't give you a merit scholarship unless you're far above the profile of an average admit.
Would it be when it comes to interviewing again? I think Francis makes it pretty clear that to mention that you're applying elsewhere.
To make clear that you are applying
So
elsewhere?
you're not applying
I
anywhere
mean, they
else.
assume you're applying to more than one college. You just don't want to talk about other colleges.
Okay,
Right?
so-
You talk about that school
So
and
you
everything
give
you know.
usually yeah.
Right, you have to know, differentiate the school you're applying to.
Mhm.
They might say to you, what are some other schools you're applying to? You can't say not applying anywhere else. You might just say 2 others. Like, I wouldn't say all of a sudden everything. Chances are they're not going to talk about other schools. So they really want to talk about their own alma mater if they're an alum, or if they're a admissions person, they want to talk about their own place they work for.
Is there a website that has a list of all scholarships that you can apply?
There's many different financial aid websites. There's finaid.org, FINAID. There's scholarships.com. If you Google college scholarships, you'll see all these different listings.
I can text you the list of things.
What's important to know, scholarships that cost money to apply for are generally scams. It shouldn't be pay $100 and you can potentially get a $500 scholarship. Doesn't make sense, right? So you have to be very careful of what's out there. And there's scholarships for everything. There's a red-headed scholarship. There's a left-handed scholarship. There's many different scholarships related to certain interests. So those are out there. They're not going to necessarily have $30,000 scholarships, but the 500 here, the 1,000 there, they can add up. Any other questions? All right, so thank you very much for listening and pleasure meeting you. Anything else?
I want to play a game called True and False. So for a couple of minutes, I just want to write down my last thought. Do you guys have any questions before I?
I talk very fast, by the way. It's funny because I'm from the South, so I used to talk a lot slower.
Where?
Florida.
Florida?
Yeah, I'm gonna post on YouTube. My recordings. I have no privacy. I have no privacy here. Wait. Does anyone have any questions?
So competition usually for like need be scholarships, or how do you describe them? Is it usually more competitive when it comes to it, or is it like how would you find?
Needs-based scholarships aren't competition. It's based on financial income.
Mm-hmm.
So the federal government has an allotment of how much they can give, so that if you're admitted to a school and you fall within the financial parameters, they'll help meet that.
Okay.
Anyone else?
There's also something to know, the idea that some colleges guarantee to meet your family's full need. Other colleges will say parents take out $10,000 in loans to make it work. So you'll see different financial aid packages that are out there. The higher the endowment a school has, the more likely they are to help meet your financial need.
So I want to play a quick game of True and False, which is so much fun. I've heard everything under the book over the years dealing with your lovely children. Thank you for letting me partially adopt them into this program. And when I tell you I've heard everything, I've heard everything. And I've heard every rumor, and I've heard everything about everyone, and all the college websites. So I want to play a little game. I took some notes while you were speaking so I can remember. So I want to go over a couple of things, just to finish off with the whole scholarship conversation. Scholarship money will magically come to me. I am a certain race, minority, ethnicity. I will just wake up, money will show up in my bank account.
It'd be so nice if it were that easy. So a lot of scholarships you have to apply for. Very often, if given a merit scholarship upon acceptance, they'll still want to see the FAFSA every year. So there is some work to do for scholarship, yes.
True or false? I will wait until college to take college classes.
False.
False, if you want to get into school of a caliber that's the type that you're looking for, where it's more highly selective, or it's more competitive, they want to see you take some types of college classes like APs or college coursework on a campus in the summer.
What if, do you mind if I
Go ahead.
A quick question: when there's like a competition between college now that they offer a few over at LaGuardia, LaGuardia Community College, and there's Queens College. But let's say instead you thought that taking the AP exam, the AP course would be probably much more worth it down the line, because with the college now you just get the credit.
Right.
But with AP you have to work for it. It's at the high school environment with the college rigor. So which would you maybe value? Because to balance in the college now, it's like an additional 2 hours that you have to accompany to your.
Right. I would say that whether you do college now or whether you do AP, it's college coursework. I think AP is more considered the standard, right? Most high school students are doing APs, so I think doing AP would make more sense.
True or false? My guidance counselor loves me, and she always knows best.
Depends on the school you go to. I know everything, so how do you
But
like
how
that?
many kids are
So
in
here's
your
what I'm
school?
telling you. So if you go to a school, I don't think I know everything. I'm not that pompous, please. So if you go to a high school where there's 1,000 kids per counselor, it could be that they are overworked, overwhelmed, and you have to do some stuff on your own. If you go to a school where there's only 50 kids per counselor, chances are that counselor knows what they're doing, and they'll be able to give you more hands-on support. It just depends.
True or false? SAT, ACT, they're just tests.
I mean, they're tests that help determine the next 4 years. They are important. I would say that standardized testing is something to get used to, whether it's for college or for graduate schools taking a LSAT or taking the MCAT or taking the GMAT. So standardized testing is a part of American Educational Society. There are some colleges that are test optional. That's not the norm, though.
Good. And with regards to getting into schools, remember, it's not just about your educational network, it's also your social network. We would have never known each other at all had it not been for NYU. Keeping that in mind, true or false, I can lie on my college application.
Some people think they're able to lie without realizing that the recommendation letters by the school official will corroborate what they're saying. So you could say, I'm the captain of this team and I'm on that club, but if the recommendation letter doesn't reference any of those, then there's lying, and colleges will call you out on that.
True or false, I don't need to worry at all about the writing section. I want to be a doctor, physician, something science related. Why do I have to study for writing? I can get a 200.
The answer is false, obviously, when it comes to the writing section. Some schools will say they prioritize critical reading and math, but again, a very low writing score is cause for alarm. A very high writing score can impress. You do the best that you can to prep for a very high writing score. It used to be that there was math and verbal, and there was an SAT-2 in writing that was really important. Now that writing is merged into the SAT, it's considered important as well.
True or false? I don't need to study for the PSAT. Colleges will never know my scores. They will never see my scores. It's just practice. Is that the right version? Yes.
It's interesting. PSAT is not as important as the SAT. However, very high scores in the PSAT can give you consideration for National Merit Scholarship. And also, if you do very well in the PSAT, you'll know where you need to improve more. So, for example, yes, it's a diagnostic, but if you see there's a discrepancy, you have to do more work in preparation for math. That's where the PSAT is helpful. So I tell my students to take it seriously. You might want to do those practice booklet questions they have beforehand, but you're really prepping then for an SAT and really doing the best you can based on having that PSAT beforehand to know where you need to improve the most.
True or false? I can have awful grades 9, 10, 11, but in 12th grade, by June of 12th grade, I will be straight A's.
If you have an amazing senior year, but really bad first 3 years, colleges won't see the senior year grades unless you're applying as a transfer, right? So yes, a very strong senior year, you're now going to take that work ethic, bring it with you to college, and hopefully you'll do very well there, and then transfer to wherever else you want to go. But those first 3 years are critical. Colleges do look at upward trends. So if 9th grade was a B- in math, 10th grade a B+, 11th grade A-, they love that. They don't want to see you going down, and they only want to see you staying stagnant if it's A's, if it's very good. So yeah, grades are important all 3 years.
True or false? My mom, grandma, grandpa, church member, choir member, temple, bar mitzvah, rabbi can write me a recommendation letter and say I'm a great kid.
So remember what I said before, 2 teachers, 1 school official, and if you want 1 supplementary, it shouldn't be mom or dad. It shouldn't be, we got this when I was at NYU, the politician like George W. Bush wrote a rec letter for the kid. It was a standard rec letter for a kid who knows George W. Bush. It wasn't like anything special. So the President of the United States writing a rec letter isn't going to do anything. It's someone who really knows you. We used to get that all the time. But just said, this is a student who has done community service and has worked hard. That's great. Thank you. What does that do?
True or false? I'm involved in 100 clubs. I have no leadership. I can eat free pizza at 100 clubs. Why do I need leadership when I have 100 clubs?
Right. So actually the Common App only lets you list 10 different activities that you've done, whether in school, out of school, summers. So they don't want to see 100 clubs. They want to see actual commitment to a few of these on a multi-year level with multiple hours a week, hopefully with some leadership.
I'm out of questions, and I want to see if anyone has any last-minute questions to ask.
I have.
Multilingual students, do they have some kind of advantage?
Very good question. So they do look at different types of underrepresented populations. More importantly, if English is not your first language and you can't score as highly on the SAT, you can take the TOEFL exam, which is a test of equivalency of foreign language, and a high TOEFL exam can help out with the application. That's more for international students.
With some colleges, like let's say science majors, you have biology and chemistry majors, and you have the biology major being higher by, let's say, 20%. So let's say it's 60% biology major at in Harvard. Like I checked out statistics for Harvard, and they said like 60% of the science majors at Harvard were biology majors, and the other 40 was chemistry. Would you rather be a part of the higher group, or maybe try to aim to go for like the?
Yes. There are certain majors that are more common on campus: biology, English, psychology, history. So if you want to write that you're going to be a chem major, you have to have done very well in chemistry, right? So it shouldn't just be you're writing that because you think it's the shoe-in. Another example is classics. Someone wants to go into classics, has to study Latin, for example, or study Greek. So it shouldn't just be that you're a classics major without actually writing about why you're interested in that major.
Another one, if you want.
Let's see, I'll go after, yeah.
In terms of the SAT too, so like it's not like I'm so fluent with language that I could like write like amazing essays with it, but like I've been taking this specific language for 3 years and I've been taking it as an elective. So do you think that's sufficient enough for an SAT too?
So for the SAT2s, there's no essays. It's multiple choice. But you have to remember the curve. Who are you competing with? People who could be either native language, or they could have been taking that for many years at an honors level, and they do really well. So I would only take it if over the past 3 years you've really excelled in it, getting A's comes naturally to you, you might do reading books on the side for fun, then you can think about taking it.
What advice would you give to students who have difficult teachers or difficult guidance counselors or difficult advisors? I mean, these are really important years, and sometimes there's a personality clash.
It's interesting. I think difficult teachers, difficult advisors can be a way of life. You're going to have a difficult boss. You're going to have a difficult coworker. You have to be able to navigate it. So you can't just give up and just throw in the towel and say, that stinks. Like, you should actually try to schedule a meeting and try to say, what can I do to help with this, that, or the other. So be your own best advocate. High school is about speaking up for yourself. So that this way when you go to college and you really are on your own, you're able to have those tools to succeed. Be proactive.
So even if you don't necessarily like your teacher or counselor, you should still schedule meetings and try to...
Yeah.
So, with that being said, there's in one course, let's say there's AP for AP US History. You have one teacher who everyone would want because he's much easier to comprehend with. It's much simpler when it comes to explanations. The other one is more rigorous. He gives you more outlining work and this and that. But I guess the easier to comprehend one will probably give you like a better grade. The other one will give you a probably more fair grade depending on the amount of work you'd be putting in, like the amount of effort. So would the college be interested, like seeing the grade and seeing the professor or the teacher that came in? Would it also factor in as well, or is it?
Colleges don't know who's teaching what. They want you to get a very good grade in whatever subject it is you're taking, and they don't want us to the excuse my teacher doesn't give A's. So they're expecting you to do as well as you can with whatever teacher's given to you. Colleges don't see a rubric of teachers from the school. Yeah. Colleges like to see that you're doing enrichment to whatever it is that you're learning. So if you're enriching through research, you're enriching through an academic program, you're enriching through volunteerism, they like to see you doing something to supplement your actual just 9 to 5 in the classroom.
So can you, just really quick advice, because we have such an amazing opportunity here, and I just want to shout out, what do you guys want to do when you grow up? Let's go over, we have some opportunities here. Michael Courtney can give us advice, not only with NYU, he's part of the National Association of College Counselors, so I don't know, what would you recommend for...
I think it's very common.
Give me a job, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a lawyer. Lawyers, okay, they're good.
There's a lot of professions out there you've never even heard of because they haven't been exposed to it in high school, right? It's in college where you'll have this career services office with thousands of internship listings where you're able to see what else is out there. And believe it or not, there's going to be a lot of jobs that are going to be created outside in 2020 that haven't even been created yet. Meaning in the future, there's going to be a lot more technology operations. There's going to be a lot more things that are out there that there's going to be opportunities for you to excel in. So when it comes to profession, I don't think you have to know what your profession is going to be, but I think it's good in an application to list a major. Undecided is boring. There's nothing to tell. Whereas colleges will say it's okay to be undecided, it's the most common major. Yes, but it doesn't tell any story about you. So I think it's good to have interests to write about. Professions, you'll figure it out. However, if you want to go into engineering, you kind of have to know that now for college applications. You want to go into business, you have to know about taking AP Calculus and being very strong in entrepreneurial ventures. So there are certain fields, like nursing, you have to know, or medicine, they're very good in the sciences. But if most people are undecided and undecided with careers, they'll figure it out in college.
In terms of, I heard that so many lawyers are graduating. Let's say lawyers, it's just an example. And when they graduate, it's hard for them to find a job.
Correct.
Okay, so do you think this fact has to do
to affect the decision what to learn. But when I say lawyer, just an example, that a lot of our professions, like so many people graduated, they hard, they hard time finding.
So the job market was a struggle for a few years. It's gotten better of late, of recent years. However, they have a lot of people who are lawyers, but maybe didn't go to a top law school, or whatever law school they went to didn't do so well. So if you go to a top law school, you have a better chance of getting jobs. If you go to the next level law school, you have to be near the top of the class to have a better chance of getting jobs.
Computer science, those are the highest paying, those are the quickest jobs. Engineering for women is almost a guarantee.
If you can go into the STEM fields, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, there's more job offers. But you have to be good at those majors.
Yeah, what about like physician assistant?
Excellent field. Physical therapy is a great field, occupational therapy, speech therapy. So people just think doctor, without thinking there's a whole other health profession that's out there.
What if a dual major might be?
What are cooperative colleges?
What are what?
Like cooperative, there was
Competitive?
Yeah, no, like they said Georgia Tech is like a cooperative college. I don't know.
Drexel has cooperative education, Northeastern,
What is that?
PACE.
What
That
does
means
that
that you do a semester or sometimes multiple semesters of full-time work while you're there, and that can often lead to a job after college. So it's called a co-op semester. So for example, Drexel's in Philadelphia, but they have alumni all over the world, and they'll set up their undergraduates to go for a semester to a Drexel alum in San Diego and learn about pharmaceutical sales. And you'll spend a whole semester doing that full-time work. So separate from your tuition semesters of curriculum, this is just for a job, and that could lead to a job after college. You had a question? Yeah.
Yeah, do all colleges allow you to switch majors? Like, let's say, like, I know what I want to do, but let's say if I apply and I get in as a political science major and then I want to switch, after like a semester I realize I don't like it, will they let me do that?
You could definitely switch majors, but to switch colleges within the university, let's say at NYU you want to go from arts and science to the Stern School of Business, there's an internal transfer process. So you have to have certain grades, prerequisites, but to switch a major within a college, that's totally normal.
I was going to say, what if, like, will colleges understand dual majors, or if that's even possible to start up? Because I know for a professional, a professional I was looking into, it said something about involving physics, but you had to first go through the whole medical process, which is probably biology, and from there, when you specialize, physics will be necessary to like involve in. So I'm thinking it may be looking for like a dual major. So is that something to?
You think the colleges look at, or the grad schools? You mean grad schools?
I mean, when you're starting off, looking at when you're going to undergrad, would it be at that point that you start thinking of what majors to start taking, or is it just major that you're just assuming you're going to be
Good
covering?
question. So you could list a major on a college application, but most colleges you don't have to declare a major until the end of your sophomore year.
Okay.
And you're going to take different courses across different breadth of curriculum to decide what you want to do, and you might change your ideas a few times.
Okay.
You might have a dual major, which means two majors. Maybe they'll do history and economics. That's common. Or maybe biology with a minor in English. And a minor means only a few classes, whereas a major is more larger depth of classes. And that looks good, absolutely.
Okay.
And you can do the switching, but keep in mind, parents, each time you switch, it could wind up costing you a lot of extra time and money.
An extra semester
Can
if
you
you
just
switch
discuss
majors.
prerequisites, how that works?
Yeah, so it could be if you switch your major very late in the game, you might have to do an additional semester of college, and that costs additional tuition.
What's the
So-
retail tuition for a semester at NYU?
So these private schools these days, tuition, room and board, books, supplies, total package, sticker price is in the mid-60s.
So you could have a change of heart, but it can cost your parents $30,000.
So my recommendation is if that happens, take a summer course to help out. At a different school, it's cheaper. So you could be a non-matriculated student at Baruch, even though during the year you're at NYU. And this way it'll be cheaper to take that course that summer that you need to help get you back on track.
Let's say there are two students, but both of them are excellent students. The parent, one of the parents is extremely rich, and the other student's parents is not that rich. Will they accept the student that the parents are rich if, let's say, their grades, their numbers they're both very good students? Does the parents' background, financial background, has an influence about how they make the decision?
Good question. So when it comes to college admission, there's this misconception that I'm going to compare you and make a decision. They're not doing that. They're comparing you within the greater context of your school, greater context within the territory of the person's recruitment region. So it's not just you versus you from a school. It's you versus you and you all together. That being said, most colleges, especially the larger research universities, are need blind, meaning they're not going to see your financial need when you're applying. The smaller liberal arts colleges will take into account, sometimes it's called need sensitive or need aware. So someone who's very, very rich could buy a building. Any college will take that money. Someone who is very, very rich at a small liberal arts college, when it's the final decision and they're on the cusp and it's the 12th hour and they have to decide, then it will. But it's not going to be something that gets them in if everything else doesn't fall into place. So I would say don't worry about the competition that's out there, because you can only control yourself and your own profile. So don't worry about what other kids in your school have, what other people in New York City have. All you have to do is worry about what you have and do the best that you can, and you'll be fine.
So this is just about APs. So like, if I choose to take an AP in senior year, does it like really not count for colleges?
No, not at all, because they're looking at the curricular rigor of senior year. So looking to see you're taking a very demanding senior year curriculum, because they want to see if you're applying early first quarter grades or regular first semester grades. So it's very important that you're taking the highest tracking that you can in senior year as well.
And like, is it always guaranteed that it's going to count? I got to say, if I just take AP Bio, like, will it always like have that? Will students always have a guaranteed like the right they want to take it?
Most colleges will take college credit it will take AP credit if you get a 4 or 5. Every college has a sheet that says advanced standing credits, and will say, like at NYU, it says AP music theory, you're not getting credit. AP English language, you're not getting credit. Literature, you will. Human geography, no credit. So you have to look at every college to see what gets credit, what doesn't. Dartmouth is not taking any credit, but you still have to take the APs for admission purposes to look good for those schools. Leave it up to you. Yeah.
I think this was really informative, and unless you guys have any more questions, this is your opportunity. If you think of things later, keep that in mind. I just want you to, remember just how Queller Prep and the tutors, I want you to remember the tutors went through this process as well, and I personally went through this process as well, and I just don't want you guys to forget that. Like my parents were immigrants, they came here, they didn't know the education system. I navigated it all, and when I navigated it all, I didn't say, wow, it's amazing. I said, I am so angry about the stuff I didn't know. It's one of the reasons why I founded this business. This facility, which has blossomed and grown, came from a source of anger as I was getting higher and higher in my own education. The things that I was learning after the fact were very frustrating. It's one of the reasons why we start here with kids as early as 6th grade, so that we can proactively work with them. I want to remind you guys, based on my experience and based on my time, you should put in the full summer, for those of you who will be doing this, into camp. The summer when? Not before senior year. That's a little too late. Yoni's a great example. I'm happy he's here. Sorry, I forgot to invite you. But I apologize. But his mother and brother were here, though. So in my defense, I didn't forget. But with that being said, he scored, you got a, 790 in your writing section, correct? You were here 2 summers. So just keep in mind the full summer. SAT is not something you do in a week. So keep in mind we're running the 8-week camp. This is not a Princeton or Kaplan. We're not going to tell you get ready for 3 weeks and you're good to go. You need several months of repetition. This is a long-term commitment. And also the other thing, if I can tell you what I've learned from this experience, start everything very early. That's number 1. You must be your own personal advocate. You must push to get into certain classes. You cannot be afraid of believing in yourself as you're navigating this process. So please remember how important that confidence level is. With that being said, everyone gets a summer camp info and a Queller Prep pen. And I'm really glad that you guys are here. Michael, Courtney, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and everything that you do to come from the Bronx to be here. So thanks for the drive a day after a snowstorm, and we really want to give you a round of applause for being here. So thank you.